The wedding hall was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that made people uncomfortable. The groom stood at the altar, dressed in an elegant suit, but his hands were clenched into fists. His face was unreadable, his jaw locked tight, his eyes focused on the woman walking toward him. The bride. She looked radiant, smiling as she stepped forward in her shimmering white gown. But something was wrong. She could feel it. She could see it in the way people were staring at her, whispering behind cupped hands. A few guests checked their phones, their faces twisting into disbelief. One of them nudged the person beside them and muttered, "Does he know?" The groom's best man shifted uncomfortably, his phone screen glowing in his hands. He hesitated, glancing between the groom and the approaching bride, as if deciding whether to speak up. And then, he did. Stepping forward slightly, he whispered, "Brother, you need to see this." The groom's hands slowly unclenched. He didn't look away from the bride, he only reached for the phone and took it. The moment his eyes landed on the screen, his body went rigid. The guests watched in anticipation, their curiosity burning through the air. What was on that phone? The groom's best man cleared his throat. This was taken at the bachelorette party last night. A few gasps echoed through the hall. Someone in the back of the room muttered, "No way." The bride's steps slowed. Her heartbeat quickened. The look on her groom's face, it wasn't shock. It wasn't confusion. It was worse. It was the kind of look that made her stomach drop. He looked like he had just been betrayed. Her smile faltered. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet. She had no idea what he had just seen. And that terrified her. The air in the wedding hall grew heavier with every passing second. The groom stared at the phone, his expression unreadable. His grip on the device tightened. The best man shifted uncomfortably beside him, watching for his reaction, but the groom said nothing. He just kept watching. The bride, still halfway down the aisle, could feel the weight of his silence pressing down on her. Her steps slowed. The once excited whispers of the guests turned into hushed murmurs of confusion and concern. She swallowed hard. What's happening? Then, she noticed the phone in his hands. Her heart skipped. A cold chill ran through her veins. What is he looking at? Her stomach twisted into knots as she thought back to the night before. The bachelorette party, 12 hours earlier. Loud music. Flashing lights. Laughter. The night had been everything she had imagined. Her closest friends had planned an extravagant celebration, and she had let herself get swept up in the moment. There had been dancing, drinking, and endless toasts to her upcoming wedding. The energy in the room had been wild, carefree, just how she had wanted it. But then, he had arrived. A man from her past. Someone she hadn't expected to see. Tall, confident, wearing a knowing smirk. He walked into the venue like he belonged there. She had frozen for a moment, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. He shouldn't be here. But before she could react, her friends had pulled her back into the celebration, laughing, telling her to let loose. And she had. She told herself it was just one last night of fun before her wedding. She ignored the warning bells in her head. The drinks flowed. The music grew louder. The man kept watching her from across the room. Then, at some point, he had leaned in close, whispering something in her ear. Something that had made her pulse race. Something that had made her hesitate. Her friends had cheered. The cameras had flashed. Someone had recorded it. But what exactly had been caught on camera? Back at the wedding. The groom's grip on the phone tightened. He took a slow, deep breath. His chest rose and fell steadily, but his face remained cold, unreadable. The bride's throat went dry. She could see it in his eyes, whatever he had just watched had changed everything. She wanted to speak, to ask what was wrong, but the words wouldn't come out. The best man finally broke the silence. "Brother, what are you gonna do?" The groom didn't answer right away. He lowered the phone, finally lifting his eyes to meet hers. For the first time since she entered the hall, she saw it. Not just disappointment. Not just shock. It was something much worse. It was betrayal. The kind that told her this wedding might not happen at all. The silence in the wedding hall was unbearable. The bride felt her hands trembling as she clutched her bouquet. She could barely breathe. Her groom, the man she was supposed to marry in just minutes, was staring at her as if she were a stranger. The phone in his hand, the video he had just seen, had changed everything. She tried to speak, to ask what was wrong, but her throat was dry. She could feel the weight of 100 eyes on her, guests shifting in their seats, watching, waiting. The best man gave the groom a small nudge. "Brother," he whispered urgently. "Say something." But the groom didn't. Instead, he lifted the phone again, hit play, and let the video continue. The bride's stomach flipped. What is in that video? Her mind raced back to the night before. The drinks. The music. Him. The bachelorette party, hours earlier. She had told herself it was harmless fun. A wild night with her closest friends, celebrating her last day as a single woman. That's all it was supposed to be. But then, the unexpected happened. The man from her past, the one she never thought she'd see again, had walked into the room. She had frozen at the sight of him. For a moment, the noise of the party had faded, the flashing lights dimmed. He shouldn't have been there. But before she could react, he was beside her, whispering in her ear. "You still look just as beautiful as the last time I saw you." Her heart had pounded. She had forced a smile, laughing nervously, brushing it off. But he had lingered, his presence too close, too familiar. And then the real mistake had happened. Someone, maybe one of her friends, had pulled out a phone, recording the moment. The man had leaned in again, his voice low. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" She had hesitated. Just for a second. Just long enough for someone to capture it. She had answered him. And that was what the video had caught. Back at the wedding. The bride took a shaky step forward. I don't know what you saw, but..." The groom raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. His voice was calm, but his eyes were cold. "Don't lie." She swallowed hard. The air in the hall felt suffocating. He turned the phone slightly, showing her the screen. The video was paused at the worst possible moment, her face, turned toward the man, her lips parting as if she was about to say something she shouldn't have. The best man shifted beside him. "Brother, maybe this isn't the place." But the groom ignored him. He kept his gaze locked on the bride. "Tell me," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "What exactly were you about to say?" The bride's heart pounded. She remembered that moment. She knew what she had said. But she also knew that whatever came next would decide everything. The bride felt her pulse hammering in her ears. Her groom's eyes bore into her, waiting for an answer. The wedding hall was silent, the guests frozen in their seats, watching, whispering. She could see the phone screen now. The paused frame of the video, frozen in time. Her face. The look in her eyes. The hesitation. It was all there. And it told a story she wasn't ready to explain. She took a slow breath. "It's not what it looks like." The groom let out a small, humorless laugh. "Then tell me, what is it?" Her throat tightened. How could she even begin to explain? The bachelorette party, hours earlier. The club had been loud, the music pulsing, the drinks flowing freely. She had been celebrating, letting loose, enjoying her last night of freedom before stepping into a new life. And then he had walked in. At first, she had told herself it was a coincidence. A strange, unexpected twist to the night. But when he had come closer, when he had whispered in her ear, she had felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. Regret. For the briefest moment, she had let herself think about the past. About what could have been. And then she had spoken. She had said something that had changed everything. She had whispered back to him. I don't know. 2 simple words. And someone had caught it on video. Back at the wedding. The groom shook his head, staring at her. I don't know. That's what you said? The bride's lips trembled. I didn't mean it like that. The groom let out a slow breath, glancing down at the phone in his hands. You don't know, he repeated. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't even cold anymore. It was something else. It was tired. The best man stepped forward. Brother, maybe we should talk about this in private. But the groom ignored him. His eyes were locked on hers. Tell me the truth, he said quietly. Was there ever a moment, any moment, where you thought about calling off this wedding? The bride felt her heart stop. The answer should have been no. It should have been immediate, firm, clear. But she hesitated. And that hesitation was enough. The groom closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them again, they were unreadable. He slowly set the phone down on the altar, straightened his shoulders, and turned to face the officiant. I need a moment, he said, his voice steady. Then, without another word, he walked out of the hall. The guests gasped. The bride's fingers went numb, her bouquet slipping from her hands. Her world had just collapsed. The sound of the groom's footsteps echoed through the hall as he walked away. The guests sat frozen in their seats, some whispering, others watching in stunned silence. No one dared to move. No one knew what to do. The bride stood there, her hands trembling, her bouquet lying forgotten on the floor. She wanted to run after him, to stop him, to explain. But what could she even say? She turned to the best man, her voice barely a whisper. Where is he going? The best man hesitated, looking torn. He finally sighed and shook his head. I don't know. But she knew. She had seen the look in his eyes. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just betrayal. It was disappointment. And somehow, that was worse. Outside the wedding venue. The groom stepped outside, inhaling a sharp breath of cold air. He had barely noticed the gasps, the shocked expressions as he left the altar. He had only focused on one thing, the weight pressing down on his chest. He ran a hand down his face, trying to think, trying to process what he had just seen, what he had just heard. I don't know. Those 3 words echoed in his mind over and over. She had hesitated. Not just in the video. Not just last night. She had hesitated here, when he had asked her if she had ever thought about calling off the wedding. And that hesitation had said more than any words ever could. The door behind him creaked open. He didn't turn around. He already knew who it was. Her footsteps were slow, hesitant. Please, she said softly. Just listen to me. He let out a breath, shaking his head. I don't know if I want to listen. She flinched, but she stepped closer. It wasn't what it looked like. I swear. He finally turned to face her. Then what was it? Her throat tightened. She could still hear the music from the night before, still see the flashing lights, still feel the heat of that moment, the moment where she had let her doubt get the best of her. I made a mistake, she admitted. I let my past get in my head for 1 second. Just 1 second. He stared at her, silent. I never wanted to hurt you, she continued. I never wanted any of this to happen. His jaw clenched. Then why did it? Her chest tightened. She wanted to have an answer, a reason that would erase all of this, but she didn't. All she had was the truth. "I don't know," she whispered. The groom exhaled sharply, looking away. She felt her stomach drop. He didn't believe her. He couldn't believe her. And maybe, she didn't deserve to be believed. The cold air wrapped around them like an unspoken barrier. The bride stood there, waiting, hoping. But the groom just stared at the ground, shaking his head. She took a step forward, her voice small. "Please, just talk to me." He finally looked up. "Talk to you?" His voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it. "What do you want me to say?" She swallowed hard. "That you understand. That this doesn't have to change everything." His expression didn't waver. "It already has." The words hit her harder than she expected. She reached for his hand, but he pulled back. Not in anger. Not in resentment. In pain. And that hurt even more. Inside the wedding hall. The guests were still in their seats, whispering amongst themselves. The best man paced near the altar, glancing toward the doors, waiting for any sign of the groom's return. The maid of honor sat at the front, fidgeting. Should we do something?" she whispered. No one answered. Because what could they do? The officiant adjusted his glasses, clearing his throat. "Perhaps we should give them a moment." But deep down, everyone was thinking the same thing. A moment might not be enough to fix this. Back outside. The bride forced herself to keep her voice steady. "I know I made a mistake. But it wasn't because I don't love you." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Then tell me the truth. Did you ever really want this wedding?" Her heart twisted. "Of course, I did." He tilted his head slightly. "Then why hesitate?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because deep down, she knew the answer. She had spent years convincing herself she was ready for this. That she had moved on from the past. But then, last night happened. And in that single moment of doubt, she had ruined everything. The groom's voice softened, but it was no less painful. "I wasn't asking for perfection. I wasn't asking for you to pretend the past never happened." He met her gaze, eyes filled with something she wasn't ready to face. "I was just asking for certainty." A lump formed in her throat. "Can you look me in the eye right now," he asked quietly, "and tell me, without hesitation, that you never doubted us?" The words hung between them. Heavy. Unbearable. Her lips parted. Her breath trembled. And then. She hesitated. She didn't mean to. She didn't want to. But she did. And that was enough. The groom exhaled sharply, nodding to himself. "That's what I thought," he murmured. Tears burned her eyes. "I love you." He gave a sad smile. "Maybe." His voice was soft, almost gentle. "But maybe not enough." Her chest ached. "So, what happens now?" He was silent for a moment, staring at the wedding hall in the distance. Then, with a deep breath, he looked back at her. And he made his choice. The bride held her breath, waiting, hoping. But the groom's face said it all. This was it. He took one last look at the wedding hall, at the life they had been about to start, at everything they had built together. And then he let out a slow, steady breath. "I can't do this." Her heart shattered. "Wait. I can't start a marriage with doubt," he continued, his voice calm but firm. "Because if you hesitated now, on this day, then someday, maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10, you might hesitate again." Tears blurred her vision. It was one mistake. He nodded. "And maybe that's true. Maybe it meant nothing. But the truth is, I'll never know." His voice wavered slightly, but he didn't back down. And I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if I was ever your second choice. She covered her mouth, trying to hold back a sob. Please, don't walk away. He looked at her for a long moment. There was sadness in his eyes, pain, love, but also resolve. I already did, he said softly. And then, before she could say another word, he turned and walked away. Inside the wedding hall. Gasps rippled through the guests as the groom stepped back inside, his expression unreadable. He walked up to the altar, past the best man, past the officiant. He reached for the microphone, clearing his throat. The entire room fell silent. The bride followed a few steps behind, her hands trembling, but she didn't speak. The groom took a deep breath. I want to thank you all for being here today, he said, his voice steady. And I want to thank this woman, he turned slightly toward the bride, his eyes soft but distant, for being honest, even when it wasn't easy. A murmur spread through the guests. He exhaled slowly. But a marriage should never start with hesitation. It should never start with doubt. And today, I've realized something important. He met the bride's eyes one last time. Love isn't just about feelings. It's about certainty. His voice was quiet, but every word carried weight. And if you have to question it, he shook his head. Then it's not enough. The bride swallowed hard. He turned back to the crowd. There will be no wedding today. A stunned silence filled the room. Then, the groom handed the microphone back to the officiant, nodded once, and walked down the aisle, alone. The bride stood frozen, her heart in her throat. She could run after him. She could beg for another chance. But deep down, she knew. She had already lost him. 6 months later. The bride sat in a quiet cafe, stirring her coffee absently. She glanced at her phone, scrolling through old messages, old pictures, old memories. She had spent months trying to understand where it had all gone wrong. And the truth was, it hadn't been about the video. It had been about certainty. About the fact that on the most important day of their lives, she had hesitated. And love, real love, deserved more than hesitation. She sighed, setting her phone down. Maybe one day, she'd get it right. But this time, she had learned the hardest lesson of all. Some mistakes can't be undone. And some love stories aren't meant to have a happy ending.